Hello guys, my name is Shamir Asif. You guys are watching Med Learning and today we are going to study about blood vessels. So before I start this lecture, I would ask you learners to please like, share and subscribe to Med Learning and also hit the bell icon so that you will be notified about our future videos. With that said, let's begin our lecture. So I'm going to start by talking about the learning goals or the learning objectives of this lecture, and we will just go through them one by one. So first of all, I'm going to describe the role of blood vessels in the human body. I'm going to identify the different type of blood vessels in the human body, and I'm going to explain the anatomy and physiology of different blood vessels. We are also going to determine the role of different capillaries in the human body, and finally we are going to understand the role of or the function of capillary beds in the microcirculation. At the end of this lecture, you can come to this point of the video and you can see for yourself if you have learned all these objectives or not. So let me start by talking about blood vessels. Blood vessels are the channels, or basically they are the tubes through which blood is distributed throughout the body. They are basically the components of the circulatory system which transport blood throughout the body. And they are also responsible for transporting blood, nutrients, and oxygen to tissues of the body. Also, they take out waste and carbon dioxide from these tissues. So, blood vessels are very important and they are essential components of the circulatory system. Also, they are nearest near the heart and branch out towards the target tissues. So, I want to talk about the different type of blood vessels that are present in the human body. And let me just move to the next slide. So, there are mainly five types of blood vessels that are present in the human body. Number one, arteries. Number two, veins. Number three, venules. Number four, arterioles. And number five, capillaries. If I talk about arteries, arteries generally move away from the heart except for the pulmonary artery. And this can be remembered with a fairly simple trick that arteries have a capital A and they move away from the heart. Therefore, we can easily remember that arteries move away from the heart. Veins, they move towards the heart or they move in the opposite direction to the arteries. Venules are small veins and arterioles are small arteries. So venules are formed from larger veins converging into smaller veins and then into capillaries. In the same way, arterioles are formed by larger arteries converging into smaller arterioles and then into capillaries. So the capillaries are at the terminal end or the microvessels that are the site of exchange of many different substances like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and many different nutrients in the extracellular space. So they are very important when it comes to the exchange of different substances within the body. So if I move to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the structure of a blood vessel. And the wall of a blood vessel mainly consists of three layers. And apart from that, it has a lumen, which is the inner space or the inside space of the blood vessel. It mainly consists of blood, oxygen, nutrients, proteins, hemoglobin, and various other substances. If we talk about the layers of the blood vessel, the innermost layer is called the tunica intima, as its name suggests, intima, and tunic means layer. So the tunica intima basically consists of three more layers. The innermost is called the endothelium. Then we have the basement membrane, and we have the internal elastic membrane, which is exclusive to muscular arteries only. So the endothelium is the innermost layer of the tunica intima, which is responsible for the exchange of different nutrients and oxygen and other substances from the vessel wall to the lumen, and it is supported by the basement membrane. If we talk about the internal elastic membrane, which is exclusive to muscular arteries only, and this I will talk about in a minute, but this internal elastic membrane is responsible for the maintenance of the peripheral vascular resistance and also maintaining the blood pressure within the arteries. It is made up of elastic fibers and it is capable of expanding, contracting, and relaxing in a very efficient manner. The middle layer of the blood vessel is called the tunica media. As its name suggests, tunica means layer and media means middle. It consists of two more layers, which is called the smooth muscle and the external elastic membrane, which is again exclusive to the muscular arteries only. The smooth muscle is basically an involuntary muscle or non-striated muscle that is also present in the walls of the many hollow organs, and it contracts and it gives a little bit of structure to the blood vessel. The external elastic membrane also is responsible for again the same function as the internal elastic membrane, but is present in the middle layer of the tunica, a middle layer of the blood vessel. The tunica externa is the external layer or the external most layer of the blood vessel, and it consists of connective tissue with elastin and collagen. And this connective tissue is very important to help and support and protect other structures of the vessel and maintain its shape. So I want to talk a little bit about arteries and their structure. If we move to the next slide, we can see that this is the diagram of or the structure of an artery. And artery generally carry blood away from the heart, and this is true for all arteries except for the pulmonary artery. And if we look at this diagram again, we can see that the lumen of the artery is covered by the innermost layer of the artery, which is called the tunica interna, and it consists of endothelium, basement membrane, and internal elastic membrane. I've talked about the importance of these membranes and the function of these layers in the previous slide, so I'm not going to repeat that. After that, we have tunica media, which is composed of smooth muscle and external elastic membrane or external elastic lamina. And this again serves the same purpose, and it is used for contraction of the blood vessel. And I've talked about this in the previous slide as well, so I'm not going to repeat that. Further, we have tunica externa, which is the outermost layer of the blood vessel, and it consists of connective tissue, which is composed of elastic and collagenous fibers. The thing that differentiates the arteries from other blood vessels is that they have the ability to absorb and store high pressure of pump blood leaving through the heart. So this is the forte of arteries, that they can expand and absorb high pressure from the heart. And this high pressure is nearest to the heart where the blood is pumped out. For this, they have connective tissues, they have smooth muscle, and they have internal and external elastic membrane. The collagen that is present in the connective tissues gives them tensile strength, and the elastin that is present in the connective tissues gives the stretch capability, which helps them to stretch and to relax. And the collagen helps them to bring back to their normal position. And in this way, the arteries can endure a high amount of pressure. So I'm going to talk about different types of arteries that are present in the human body. And there are generally two main types of arteries in the human body. First, we have the elastic artery, and elastic arteries are generally thick-walled arteries which are present near the heart. For example, aorta and its branches. They have large lumen which allows low resistance to the conduction of blood. They also contain lots of elastin and collagen fibers, especially in the tunica media, and they also have the ability to stretch and recoil to propel blood. They can withstand large fluctuations in blood pressure, and they also allow blood to flow fairly continuously throughout the body. If I move to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the muscular arteries, which are the second type of arteries. And these arteries are generally medium-sized arteries distal to the elastic artery, and they have large number of smooth muscles, allowing them to contract and expand depending on the peripheral blood demand. They are also active in vasoconstriction. A few examples are radial artery, femoral artery, and splenic artery. So if I move to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about arterioles. And arterioles are generally very small arteries that lead to capillary beds. And they mostly consist of smooth muscle. And if you look at this diagram, we can see that the innermost layer of the arteriole is composed of endothelium, which is surrounded by a smooth muscle layer. And the outermost layer is the connective tissue layer. And this is composed of mostly collagen fibers. And arterioles are basically the primary site of vascular resistance, and they have high resistance. They basically slow down the flow of blood from the arteries, and they regulate the blood flow to capillary with contraction of smooth muscle. So they are really important when it comes to peripheral vascular resistance. So we have talked about arteries and arterioles, and I want to talk a little bit about the third type of blood vessels, which are veins. And veins generally are the blood vessels which carry blood towards the heart. And if we look at the structure of veins, veins consist of the same layers as other blood vessels, but there are a few differences that I would like to point out. First, the lumen of the vein is covered by the endothelial membrane, which is a part of the tunica interna. And then the endothelial membrane is covered by the basement membrane and the internal elastic lamina. After that, we have the tunica media, which is composed of the external elastic lamina and the smooth muscle. And then we have the tunica externa, which is composed of connective tissues. When it comes to veins, the veins generally have very thin tunica media and tunica externa as compared to arteries. Therefore, they do not have that much capability to relax and expand, and they do not have that much capability to take pressure and maintain their shape. Therefore, they are thin-walled as compared to arteries. Apart from these structural differences, we have walls that are present within the veins, which prevent the backflow of blood, and they are very important to maintain the flow of blood within the arteries. But this requires the movement of skeletal muscle to pump blood through the heart, and they have a slow and low blood pressure, and they can also be easily stretched, but they do not recoil. So I want to talk a little bit about venules and their structure, and these are the four type of blood vessels that we have to discuss. And these type of blood vessels are very small veins or very small vessels that leave the capillaries. And these are very small blood vessels that are present in the microcirculation that allow blood to return from the capillary and to drain into larger blood vessels. So venules are very thin and they have very small radius. So they consist of a endothelium which is surrounding the lumen, and they also have walls like veins, and they are and the endothelium is covered by the basement membrane, which is in turn covered by the smooth muscle and the outer coat. These venules are very thin and very small, and they are present all over the body. They do have a large amount of blood supply within them. Approximately 25% of the blood supply within the human body is present in the venules. So finally, I want to talk about capillaries and their function. And capillaries are generally the blood vessels which are the sites of exchange with tissue cells. They have very thin walls and they are only one cell thick. They have low blood pressure to allow slow blood flow. And capillaries are basically micro vessels that are again the sites of exchange of many substances, especially oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and other types of substances that are exchanged within the tissues. So if I talk about the different types of capillaries, let's just move to the next slide. And I want to show you guys the different types of capillaries that are present in the human body. So structurally, there are three types of capillaries. The first one is called the continuous capillary, and this is the least permeable capillary. And it consists of basically an endothelial layer and a basement membrane, and it has little intercellular clefts or gaps within these layers through which very few substances can pass or very few molecules can pass. But they do allow the exchange of small molecules to pass through them, and small molecules can pass through them through these tight junctions. So they basically consist of adjacent cells that are held together with tight junctions and intercellular clefts. These are the intercellular clefts, these are the gaps within the membrane of the capillary, and these allow the passage of very few substances or very small molecules that can pass through them. So after continuous capillaries, I want to talk about the second type of capillaries that are present in the human body, and these are fenestrated capillaries. Fenestrated capillaries are basically capillaries which are permeable, a little more permeable than continuous capillaries, and they have large pores. And these pores are called fenestrations. And if you see this diagram, you can see that the basement membrane is surrounded by the endothelial membrane. And the endothelial membrane consists of small pores or small holes inside the endothelium. And these holes or pores are called fenestrations, and these fenestrations allow fairly large number of solutes and other molecules to pass through them. And these type of capillaries are present in the small intestine, endocrine glands, as well as in the kidneys. So this is all about the fenestrated capillary. If I move to the next slide, I want to talk about the third type of capillaries, which are called the sinusoids. And these are really the most permeable type of capillaries. If you look at the structure of these capillaries, you can see that they have endothelial membrane, which has a large amount of holes, which are also called intercellular gaps. And these are huge gaps that are present in the endothelial membrane, and it is covered by a basement membrane, but this is an incomplete basement membrane, which means that large amount of proteins and other molecules and even blood cells can pass through these capillaries. These type of capillaries are mainly present in liver, bone marrow, lymphoid tissues, and some endocrine organs. Blood flows very sluggishly through these type of blood capillaries, so that the modifications can occur and exchange of materials can occur easily. Last topic that I want to discuss in this lecture today are the capillary beds and what happens in the capillary beds and what is the process of exchange of nutrients within the capillary beds or oxygen in the capillary beds. So in the capillary beds, there is microcirculation of interwoven network of capillaries. So this fancy word just means that there is a interwoven network, as you can see in this diagram, and these capillaries are interwoven or they are intertwined within each other, and they consist of a network and they are making a network here. So what I wanted to focus on is this, that they have pre-capillary sphincters, and these are basically the gates that are present after the meta-arteriole, and the meta-arteriole is basically the junction between the arteriole and the capillary, which is called the meta-arteriole. And at this meta-arteriole, we have pre-capillary sphincters, and these pre-capillary sphincters are basically the gates or the junctions at which the exchange can be closed or opened. And you can see in the next part of this diagram is that here the sphincters are open and here they are closed. When they are closed, there is no exchange of gases or anything taking place within the network of capillaries. And when they are like this closed, and when they are open, the exchange of nutrients and oxygen and different type of substances is happening within the capillary beds. So this is the last topic that I wanted to explain to you guys, and these type of capillaries which are present within the within this network are called the true capillaries. So thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to Med Learning, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.